Hello, Bushmasters. This is Semi-Indestructible. I'm Bradley Trevor Grieve. Welcome to episode 6 of the podcast. We're proud to be in partnership with the Wild Times podcast. And of course, Semi-Indestructible is sponsored by Adventure Beasts, the animated wildlife comedy series streaming worldwide on Netflix today. So today we're talking about strength and pain and how to optimize one and minimize the other in order to have the best possible life adventure that you can. But before I get to that, a little bit of housekeeping. Quite a few messages that made me laugh. People calling bullshit on the vodka treatment to get rid of a snake off your body. It's not bullshit. It's absolutely true. The snake's Jacobson organs are very sensitive. So if you have any medical alcohol, swabbing alcohol that you should carry in your first aid kit, and you always should carry a little of it. It's very useful, not just for cleaning hideous wounds and infections, but also, here's a tip, particularly if you're in Southeast Alaska, go to a Devil's Club plant. They're everywhere. Big red berries, horrible thorny looking plant, massive leaves. Take a few of the leaves off, put some of the alcohol on it, and slap it on. If you've got a sprained ankle, slap it on your sprained ankle, leave it overnight. I promise you'll feel better in the morning. But as far as snakes and other reptiles that are biting you, whether they're venomous or not, if you just take a little bit of vodka or any other medical spirit, you don't want to just pour it over them. That would be harmful. Just take a little swig and just hiss it into their face. A mist of the alcohol will be incredibly disturbing for them, and they'll release their grip and their bite and retreat almost instantaneously. And you trust me, I know this. Now, I personally prefer vodka. This happens to be a nice big catering bottle of Grey Goose vodka. It's one of my favorites. But, if you don't have a premium bottle of vodka on hand, then, why don't you? Take a good look at yourself. All right, today we're talking about pain and strength. And I've got a very special guest who's a great friend of mine, helped me out a lot in both of these areas in the past. His name is Coach Evan Nelson, a.k.a. No Neck Nelson, a.k.a. Viking Brad Pitt. He is a very experienced personal trainer. He has his own business. He's coached a lot of people back from the brink, including myself. True story, we were working out one day, and another guy in the gym literally had a heart attack and died. And Evan rushed out and got the defibrillators and everything else and brought the man back from the afterlife right there in the gym. We took a spell, bought some expensive energy drinks, toasted our good health, and got back on with our workout. That's just how he rolls. He has overcome a great many setbacks in his own life to be where he is today. He was an athlete in college, and he's gone on to success in bodybuilding as well, and overcome injuries and obstacles along the way. So he doesn't just teach it, he also lives it, and that's why he's here today. Fellow Bushmasters, please welcome my good friend Evan No Neck Nelson.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was great. That was great. And I gotta say, as far as the with the vodka, and now I have an excuse to carry around vodka everywhere I go, just in case I get bit by a snake or the snake won't get off me. I'm like, well, you know what?
You got to have it. And you know what? I seriously do recommend this. You know those little tiny bottles they give you on the airplanes, or they used to?
Yeah.
As
little pocket
Yeah,
ones.
and the plastic ones are great because less likely to fall. You fall in and smash and puncture you everywhere. But you can get these little bottles of vodka, and there are other spirits, but vodka is a little less on the nose if you spill it everywhere. It's a great mixer. But there are other spirits you can use to marinate if you catch or if you do some hunting, you got meat or fish to marinate. But seriously, I used to carry, and I still do occasionally, a little bottle of vodka when I'm in the bush all the time. And you don't need an excuse, but now you have one.
Now I have one. And, in the spirit of today's topic, I thought I'd wear one of my favorite shirts, and I think that you would enjoy this one quite a bit. But for those who are watching this,
There you go. Progress through pain.
Progress through pain.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I love that guy. I love him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love his story too.
Mr. $7 in his pocket.
Well, so much respect for him.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I wanted to mention something. People who had watched Adventure Beasts, there's a live action Stings at the end of it. And in the live action, this is the actual shirt I wore on set. And the reason I wore it today is to show how loose it is. And that's because I had 2 medical setbacks in the last 2 years, as you know.
Right.
We got a really shocking dose of COVID. My daughter split her chin open doing the kind of stuff that I did as a kid. Had to take her in for a little bit of surgery, and they kept us waiting a long time in the hospital. We all caught COVID, which was difficult because my wife was, 7 months pregnant at the time, so there's some serious complications. I ended up with some micronodules in my lungs. I've been knocked out for a long time. In that process, I lost almost 10 pounds in weight. Then recently, as you and I and listeners know in episode 1, as to why this podcast was delayed, and because we talk on the phone from time to time, that I had an accident carrying a heavy box and fell awkwardly on concrete and crushed 3 discs in my back and did some nerve damage.
Ooh.
So I've lost, since I last saw you, I've lost close to 20 pounds. And normally I'd be thrilled. But that's not just fat. I wish it was. It's muscle mass. It's one of the many unexpected side effects of pain and illness. And I wanted to talk about that in a broader context. A lot of our listeners enjoy the great outdoors. They like hiking, they like backpacking, they hunt and fish and do a lot of different things in the great outdoors. And I think there's a mentality that, certain types of training are just for athletes, people who are playing sport, whether it's casually or recreationally or professionally, and just how overall strength and well-being serves you well in the bush. And we can talk about some of our experiences, how you got me ready for some of these Animal Planet expeditions and repaired me when I got back. But I want to talk about pain and some of the things that people don't realize are likely to happen to you when you're seriously injured or ill in the recovery process. What are some of the symptoms when people get badly injured?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying, guys, if you like the Wild Times, check us out on Patreon. We put out 4 extra podcasts per month.
That's one commute a week that you're just going to be laughing and learning the whole time in the car. Hey, let me do something else. This is the late night content, the stuff that we can't show on YouTube because they'll kick us off YouTube.
It's the Cinemax of podcasts. Uncensored, raw dog. It's the Cinemax of podcasts. Check it out. Link right here.
So, some of the more obvious injuries that occur are like when you're not able to move properly. So if you were to tear a rotator cuff, they're like, trying to raise your hand all the way up and everything. The highest you'd be able to raise it would be like, maybe even like just a quarter of that, or you wouldn't be able to lift it at all, right? So those are some more like obvious injuries, right? Or like you can't move or you can't move your leg because you broke it and everything, right? So you're like, this doesn't work. This hurts a lot. Or you're in shock and everything. And you're just sweating. You're like, I can't feel my leg, but it looks pretty bad. It's like, wow, there's a bone sticking out there. Ooh, geez. But no,
not ideal.
Yeah, not ideal. But as far as like when assessing pain, times where when you're training, it will be painful. Not always. It doesn't always have to be painful. You don't have to always go for the pain.
Oh, now you tell me that after all these years. Now you say we didn't have to suffer.
Well, actually, I mean that's not what I'm saying. Actually, to all my clients who will be listening or watching this, I think they know this, and you know this as you do. That you would enter into the pain cave, and it's like you'd have a nice little stay in the pain cave because that's where we grow.
But see, that's the point. There's good pain,
exactly,
that helps you grow physically, mentally,
right?
And then there's the bad pain, which you waste away. You lose your mental focus. You become isolated physically and mentally. I'm laughing before because the things you're saying they just ring so true. I remember I've had a couple of rotator cuff tears. I've had a couple of shoulder rebuilds. I had a trainer, Charlie Duga, who was a 3-time Mr. World natural bodybuilder, little Maltese guy, just a lovely guy from Australia. And they used to jokingly refer to me as Mr. 3 o'clock because I couldn't get this arm up. And so,
3 o'clock. I like that.
And then I remember also my first rotator cuff tear was interesting because I was doing a military press, which was one of my strongest movements at that time, and the gym bought a new chair, and
Oh,
the chair was
yeah.
slightly different. And on my warm up, I do mean a warm up, maybe 20 pounds aside, just warming up, and it just went boom, and it was like the lights were a dimmer switch, and the lights and the power went off. But the side effect of that was, as that was healing, was that my spine got all messed up because I was compensating by always using the other arm. But I guess I know there's so much to talk about in this, but I just want to talk about there's the physical damage in itself,
Right. Yeah.
which is so often mismanaged, even especially by people who are strong-willed and determined to live their life and maybe don't care for themselves enough, and so it gets worse. There are people that pretend it didn't happen, and then they work around it in a way that's not healthy, and that's when you end up hurting your other leg or your other arm or your neck or something like that.
Right.
And then there are people who are just crushed by it, never come back.
Mhm.
Talk about those guys. Talk about each of those and how to work through if you're doing too much, if you're doing the wrong thing, if you're not doing enough.
Right. So yeah. So the three different categories, you've summarized them quite perfectly. So like the first guy or gal, like the person who like he just like they trained so hard and then it just ends up happening, right? And sometimes this happens because you've been going too hard for too long, that you don't pace yourself in certain areas where it's like we're just going ahead and like just beating our heads over with a club and everything over and over again until we get big, right? And then on it can just be a warm up set, or it could be just you picking up a piece of paper, or like moving something just slightly differently, and that could be the what is it, the hair that broke the camel's back,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Sure,
Straw,
something like
hair,
that. Straw
chocolate,
hair, yeah,
chocolate truffle. It was a small item that was just
exactly.
one too far. That
The
the
tipping
waffy
point.
the waffia thin mint on the
Yes,
mouth on the tongue of Mr. Creosote and Monty Python before he explodes. It's that little thing you don't know
yes.
where that line is, but when you cross it, then you know.
Exactly. And the thing is like you can go on, and especially when you're younger as well, like you can go and continue to train hard like that for so long, but eventually you are going to get injured.
Yes.
And it could be even just that warm up. Now the other guy, the one who just chooses to ignore the injury. So usually the second guy is the first guy, but then moves on to the second round where he doesn't
Oh,
listen to his body.
so he
So
hurt himself, and now he's like, I still want to keep going, but now I have to work around this obstacle. But he's just basically ignoring the damage, and therefore,
and therefore he's going to just increase the damage even more so. So
yeah.
instead of finding out what the issue is and then training around it while also simultaneously rehabbing it, this person's like, no, that's boring. I want to do what I want to do. And
Sure.
my body is telling me no, but I am saying, well, we're gonna do this anyway, whether you like it or not. And it's like we're not there yet, so we're going, and all that. So you're
Mm.
like basically your ego is the one that's driving, and then like your body's in the back seat. It's like I need to go to the bathroom. In this case, the bathroom is I injured myself and I need rehab, and all that. And
Right.
your ego is saying, no, you're gonna shut up, and like we're gonna get to our destination, and there's nothing you can do, and all that. And then the kid pees his pants in
It's
this
funny
case.
how my ego sounds exactly like your voice. I think you might be in my head all the time.
Oh well, I mean that was I actually had to write that down because I was observing your mind before this, so it's good that you caught that now. I mean,
I remember
yeah, I was camping out there for a little while.
it's funny how injuries can get you. I remember after my daughter was born, and we were in the
Mhm,
middle of filming Little Giants, and the way that production worked is we cut the schedule into three sections. We
mhm,
had the Americas, so basically North America, it really was just Mexico and US,
mhm,
and then we had Africa, and then we had Southeast Asia. And then we would get a little rest and rehab in between. And it
mhm.
was structured that way also because they knew my daughter was coming and I was going to be there for the birth no matter what. So,
Of course, yeah.
which was great. But during the 4 weeks they gave us, which was the longest time off, where my daughter was born that month, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I was broken down. I'd fractured my pelvis in the second episode in Mexico, and I had to go through the whole thing sucking that up. And at that point, I didn't know it was two fractures. I thought I just torn a muscle.
Right.
As it wasn't a clean break, so I didn't hear anything creaking. The pain was incredible.
Right.
But I got to the production in some of the best shape of my life. You know, at that point I think I was in my late 40s. I was 48. And you got me back, and we were lifting really well. Doing 5 big sessions a week. And then I do a couple of mild aerobic sessions myself on the weekend. My cholesterol levels were down. My blood pressure was down. My fat levels were down. My muscle content was up. My strength was up. And then, bang, fractured pelvis. I think if I hadn't had the muscle mass that I had in my glutes and quads, it might have been a much more serious injury. But I remember when I was going to the plane to do the Southeast Asian leg, Thailand, Laos, and somewhere else that'll come to me in a second. Mm-hmm. It was cold morning here. It was in February, cold morning, and I just grabbed this big equipment thing off the trolley to load it in the airport, and bang, just tore my bicep. And it wasn't a full tear, but a partial tear, incredibly painful. And out of nowhere, nothing heroic, just not warmed up, cold morning, bit stiff, 4 weeks off, recovering, all focused on the baby, wasn't doing any serious training with you at the time, just light stuff, and snap. Now I had to suffer through the next few weeks in the bush, with this torn bicep, my strong arm, my dominant arm. What was fascinating is that when I came back, the pain was still there. It was hard to lift it and hard to lower it. And I ended up holding the baby in my left hand. To this day, now she's 4 now. Mm-hmm. To this day, I pick up the baby in my left arm. So I guess the point that I'm getting to is these injuries can come out of nowhere. You can form habits, good or bad, during the injury process that you don't necessarily are aware of. You're changing the way your body moves, even though you're not thinking about it. So now I'm a left-hand baby holder because I didn't get used to holding a baby when my right arm was buggered. That's something that fascinates me, that kind of negative muscle memory. I mean, it's not something that I would have thought about had I not been talking to you and reflecting on these old injuries.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you bring that up. I think I have a story that's somewhat relatable as far as actually, so I'm actually rehabbing a knee injury too. Like I have some inflamed. I have like in my left knee, I have some like inflamed tendons and everything. Granted, it was to a point where I was just getting back into the swing of things. I just suffered from appendicitis a couple months earlier,
Really?
and like I was just getting into the swing of it. Oh yeah, it was great. The end of 2022, I was like, I don't feel so good. I'm throwing up a lot, and I'm like. And my stomach hurts immensely. And then pretty much it took Cassie to get me, my fiance to get me to go to the hospital, because I was just like, I'm not going to the hospital because they're just going to turn me away and just say, oh,
it's true.
Take a Tums and you'll be fine. I was like, I don't think I need
take a Tums.
That's what they would typically do. But
we've spoken a couple of times since then. You've never mentioned this. So did you have it cut out or did it settle down? What happened?
Oh yeah.
Damn.
No, honestly, I'm sorry, Bradley, but I think we get too caught up in sports and working out that
it's too. We are obsessed with football, and we're both in the AFC.
Yep.
So Evan's a big Steelers fan, and he has a very special family connection to the Raiders. I do. Obviously moral failings throughout his family, and but it's funny because they're both really important foundation teams. So I kind of want them to do well, but I also want the Kansas City Chiefs to destroy them. But moving on from that, let's get back to the appendicitis, though. Because this is a great gateway into the next topic, which is about how having a high pain tolerance can work against you. Talk about the procedure and the recovery for someone like you. So how did you recover from that?
Hey, Brosners, thank you for being loyal subscribers. We appreciate everything that you do. And now we have a membership offer for you.
I think you can get ad-free episodes, I heard.
That's pretty big.
Ad-free's big, but you can also get your comments looked at so we don't have to sift through the millions.
How do you do that?
There.
Is there some sort of badge system?
There's a badge system, a loyalty badge. Boom. Shows up next to your name in the comments. Boom. We read the comment.
All this badge talks make I'm going to the badge store.
He's going to get a badger. He's gonna buy one. Didn't earn it. He's gonna buy one.
He did a fake leave.
I assumed Kyle would know to cut on the motion.
All right, let's cut now. That's our ad.
Yes. So as far as with the appendicitis, it was really funny because before it happened, actually like a couple weeks before, I was having this weird sensation, somewhat near my groin, and I was like, "Oh, is this like the early signs of like a hernia?" I went
Yeah.
to my doctor to get checked out. They were like, you're good. Like, if anything, it's like maybe you have like a strain, a lower abdomen strain, but no,
Sure.
you have no hernia." So I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll just kind of continue to do some core work, and then off I go." Um, but when it all went down, it was quite literally like I will say that the appendicitis pain has been the most painful thing that I've done, or that I've gone through.
Really? What are some of the
Um,
other things you've gone through?
like I've had I had like a nice disc bulge when I was
Mhm.
in football, where it's like I had to be out for a few weeks. Actually, I missed pretty much half the season just because it took so long to get like the MRI and everything.
Oh, tell me
Um,
about it.
but as far as like with the pain that I felt from that when I experienced that disc bulge, it was kind of an accumulation of squatting really heavy. So
Mhm.
I was maxing out at 455 when I was about 17, and
Solid.
when literally happened the first play, the opening kickoff of the very first game of the year. I remember
Mm.
I was one of the wedges. So basically, I was creating that wall for the kick returner to like run behind so that they can get more yards. But anyways, the I remember I went to my spot before I had to turn around and create that wall. I remember when I planted my foot, I actually like felt like sharp little pain happen. I was like, "Oh, this is
Mm.
not good." And so, being a football player is like, "Well, I'll get to that after the game." So
Right.
I turn around and I'm about to face the guy who's coming in, and then I start to spasm up my back, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden this guy comes in and just hits me. I go barrel rolling on the sidelines, and I remember that the film session after that, my coach would like rewind and then play it again, rewind, play it again of me just barrel rolling on this on the field. I was like, "What was that, Evan?" And I'm like, "Well, that was the play I got injured." And they're like, "Oh," and then they're like, "Okay, we're moving on." But yeah, it was tough. But that was like the pain that I had with, like, I guess with that pain is just I knew what it was, or
Yeah.
like I had an idea of like what was causing it, and like there was things I can do to like not cause that pain, at least, like kind of avoid that pain. But when I was having my appendicitis, that was especially when I didn't know what was going on. So
No.
quite literally, I just felt this pain in my stomach, and there was nothing I can do. Um, and it's
Was it
like,
like a tearing pain or a burning pain or a nauseating pain or a combination of
it
those
was like
things?
it was a combination. It felt like someone was stabbing me, and like someone was like ripping apart my insides, or like, but
Tearing,
also
stabbing.
as if like
Interesting.
my stomach was about to explode and all that. So um, I remember
Interesting.
I was feeling kind of like this nauseous, like, "Oh man, like my stomach's like kind of hurting." I'm like, "Okay, well, it'll go away." And then just as the day went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I started throwing up. And then
Oy.
after that, like I was trying to get, like, it just got to a point where I'm like, I was just in agony. I could not, um, I could not escape it. Like, there was no way that I could, like, the only time that I felt somewhat relieved was right after I threw up. And that was like,
Wow.
and the thing was, I was throwing up not only yesterday's meal, but then I was throwing up everything to the point where I was only throwing up bile at that point. And
Yeah.
then, obviously, like my son and my dog were both like freaking out. And it was to a point where like I was hunched over on the couch just because I couldn't stand, but I couldn't walk. But
What did you think it was at that time? Did you think you'd just torn something at lifting?
no, actually, what I thought it was, or again, because my fiance was saying maybe it's just a really bad form of gastritis, and so,
Oh, you thought you ate something, you had some bad mushrooms or
yeah,
some rotten meat or something weird.
yeah. So but it
Isn't
got
that
to the point
interesting?
where my face got like kind of almost like a grayish white, and my lips
Mm,
turned blue, and
that's not ideal.
that's when she was like, "You're going to the hospital." I'm
So
like,
would it be fair to say though,
"Mhm."
um, would it be fair to say that had you not had your higher than average pain tolerance based on who you are and your background and your profession,
Mhm.
that you might have gone to the hospital earlier rather than just sit this out?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely would have. I, I think that as far as if my pain tolerance was lower, I would have gone sooner. But at the same time, it's like this. Oh, I can kind of tough it out. Like I've been
Right.
through worse. It's not like it's going to pass. But when it got to a point where it wasn't passing, I'm like, okay, this is it's tough. But sitting in that emergency room, waiting room for 6 hours before I got seen, that was, or before I got admitted
That's
in.
the
Yeah.
longest time. That is
Yeah.
the cold molasses of time
Oh yeah.
in
But
the ER, just sitting there, and they just everyone but you, and you're in agony. Yeah,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
get that. I was going to say that what's interesting about that is that this is part of the reset that I advocate, and I know I'm speaking for you as well.
Mhm.
It's great to build up a tolerance for discomfort and pain. It is. It's
Yeah.
healthy.
Exactly.
But there comes a time where it works against you. Now, it can work for you most of the time, but you don't want to ever confuse pain tolerance with being deaf to your own body.
Right.
And I was thinking that in this instance, Cassie may have saved your life. If you just sat there for another 24 hours and it had ruptured, that could have been catastrophic, possibly fatal.
Yeah.
And that would have, I think about your bulging disc at 17. I mean, that's an old man's injury. And I think about what you're lifting at that time. Oh, let's assume that your form was pretty good. It wouldn't be as good as it is now, but let's assume your form was pretty good at 17.
It was decent. It was decent.
Says you.
Yeah.
And we don't know. But I know how
Right.
good you are with form now. But I know you've mastered it. But I just think of Ronnie Coleman, the king.
Yeah.
Ronnie
Yep.
Coleman. If people watching, listening don't know who Ronnie Coleman is, look him up. He is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, he is considered to be the strongest bodybuilder of all time.
Yes. Mr. squatted 800 pounds for 2 reps, and his only regret is that he didn't go for that 3rd rep.
And didn't, because he fractured his vertebrae. And instead of calling it a day, he then got onto the leg press so he could get the pump in his legs that he was setting out for when he started squatting.
Yep.
And now the man can't walk. He's had all the surgeries in the world, and he's on
A bunch of pain medication.
He's on crutches and pain medication. And to his credit, he hasn't complained. But I'm just saying, we all like to think we're strong and tough, but none of us are as strong or as tough as Ronnie Coleman. Didn't help him. And one way having pain tolerance has helped me was I grew up, I think I told you, with a medical family. My dad was a surgeon, my mother was a nursing sister and a lecturer, and they dealt with terminally ill people, really serious illnesses. And my dad specialized in a lot of different types of cancers, but particularly bowel cancers. And by the time that people recognize they have bowel cancer, it's often very late.
Right.
And so he's dealing with life or death stuff every day. Now, I'm not saying I had a tough childhood. I didn't. I was loved. I had opportunities. I had encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I didn't have was the right to sort of sulk about stuff, because they would basically hit the argument of like, well, people are living or dying. You'll be fine with that. That's a minor injury. That's a minor thing. And so my sisters and I didn't really miss much school because we were never sick enough to justify staying home compared to the people that my mom and dad were looking after. And so the mentality that I had growing up was that, yeah, that's fine. It's not bad enough to stop. It's not bad enough to stop. Now, that helped me enormously when I was in the Army, and certainly when I was trying to get into an elite group like the 3rd Battalion Airborne in the Army, in the Australian Army, the Elite 3 RAR Para. That was great. Like, oh, sprained ankle, that's fine. You can run on that. That's torn, that's fine. And that was helpful in that regard, that you don't want to stop. And I remember saying in a previous episode, 2 of the guys that quit the course early were semi-professional athletes. One was an endurance kayaker and one was a triathlete. And they quit because they said, I can feel my body getting damaged, and I know that if I don't stop now, I'll be damaged forever. And I'm like, well, that's the point. We're soldiers. We're meant to suffer. We're meant to get damaged, and we're meant to keep going. That's why we're special.
Right.
That was the good way of getting me through it. The bad part about that is you don't stop and pay attention to, in your case, this pain and discomfort. You shrug it off. My grandfather, who was tough as nails, he was a dairy farmer. get up at
Just
dawn and
same with my grandfather.
Exactly.
Too.
Exactly. It's the one
Yeah.
part of your background that I respect. And and so he, tough as nails, get up every morning in the freezing cold and look after the cows and all that stuff. I used to love helping him. I was a little kid, helping him in the barn and so forth. He had a sore throat. And he finally calls my dad, and he used to never call, and he lived in a different state. He called my dad and he said, "Oh, I've got a sore throat. I can't seem to swallow." And my dad said, "Okay, let's talk through this." And it wasn't because he had a general sore throat. The guy had a tumor the size of a golf ball in his neck.
Jesus. Yeah.
And he put it off until he couldn't physically swallow his cup of tea. And my dad, again, this is all on the phone. He didn't have video calls and he wasn't in person. And he said, "That sounds like you've got a suspicious growth in your throat. I need you to go to the doctor immediately." He went to the doctor. It was a tumor, and he was dead a few weeks later.
Damn.
There is a downside to conditioning yourself to tolerate pain and discomfort. And the question I ask you is, how do you balance being tough enough to do the things you want to do, to get stronger, to prevent injuries, to be, to go out into the wilderness and do things that people are too afraid or too weak or too exhausted to attempt? How do you balance building up that mental resistance to pain and discomfort with keeping in tune with your body so you don't make a catastrophic, if not fatal, error in judgment?
Right. So now with this, I think that sometimes one, you need to go out and experience hard things. So again, taking up weight training, lifting heavier weights or relatively heavy weights.
Sure.
I think that that's something that you are supposed to do to help build that resilience and that resistance to pain, like to help you bring a higher pain tolerance. Doing things that require you to build that up. So, I mean, again, a lot of these people that do the cold showers, the cold plunges, and I know it's kind of being a little overglorified now.
Sure.
I know that, having ice baths, like for athletes so that they can recover a little bit faster. It's not about like muscle growth. It's about like just recovering enough so that they're ready for the next fight or the next match or the next game.
You don't have to be an athlete to do. I know guys who are performers.
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
he has to play Gershwin, and he's a bit older than me.
Right.
And he's in great shape, slim, and he was never going to be a prize fighter, but he's a slim, fit guy. He has to put his hands in ice before he performs because he'll be playing the piano flat out for an hour or two.
Right.
So I'm just these are valid therapies as well as being discomforts, right?
Exactly. And now, like when I say they're being overglorified, it's because it's really trendy now that you see. All these people.
That thing, the Wim Hof thing, where you dip your nuts in Arctic ice and a seal licks them or something. And I'm all for seals licking my nuts, but it's not. I get it. I get it. I mean, I think it would be beneficial to a point, but it's not necessarily a come to Jesus. It's just another form of mental and physical therapy, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that it is great to kind of help build that resilience and that grit that we do search for, especially when we're trying to, get a bigger pain tolerance. Now, granted, it's like knowing the difference between being hurt and then being hurt from like that burning pain that you get from when you're working out, that like those like 3 or 4 reps at the end where like, oh man, this hurts so much. And then when you're done, you're like, oh, like it's like that instant relief, but also you're still in that pain where like, I can't move my arms because they're so pumped and all that. It's something that I'd hear you say all the time when we train. It would be crazy.
Well,
like, Bradley, we're doing legs today. I don't know why your arms are pumped. But as far as like the difference between that and then like I guess like that searing, like tearing, or like I guess like that stabbing pain. So I guess if it's more of like a sear where like when you really hurt yourself and you have that instant cold sweat. Yeah. So I feel like knowing the difference, and sometimes it's like, like mess around and find out type of deal. Sometimes it does require some of that where you're like, you need to see where your limits are at first. But they're going to shift too over time, or
good days, bad days, haven't had any sleep.
Right, exactly,
You know, all that kind of the levels of fluid, right?
Yeah, and I think that taking in like a moderate approach of, when you go in to doing maybe a new exercise, obviously you start like just to understand the movement in general, and then
Mm,
slowly increase weight and everything to see where you're at and see how far you can push it with before you have like mechanical breakdown where like your technique starts to break down a little bit. Once that happens, right? Okay, that's kind of where your body is right now, and then like let's kind of pull it back a little bit, work in
mhm.
like maybe instead of going to like a 100 or a 90% effort, let's work at that 60 to 70 just for a little while, just so that you get more comfortable with this heavier weight, and then start to push it forward. And then there's always like other different ways that you can train as well. But as far as like when it comes to knowing the difference between like injured pain and the growth type of pain, I think that as far as like you need to know. Um, I'm sorry, I just like I was just thinking about you doing leg press and chasing the monster and everything.
Well, you know what, we should talk,
Yeah.
we should talk about that briefly
Yeah.
because look, I am guilty of going too far. You
Right.
are guilty of aiding and abetting that, but I don't regret it. I mean, I
Mhm.
did have times. So again, when I went out to do Little Giants on Animal Planet
Mhm.
and uh, regular Bushmasters will remember that I spoke to Billy Arman, my co-host on Little
Mhm.
Giants. I was in great shape for my age and my history. 21 surgeries, eight treatments for rabies. Reindeer tore off my nipple. For being that guy, I was in good shape, and we were lifting really, really well. We were
Right.
cedar rows. I don't know, 3, 4 sets of 20, 500 pounds.
Mhm.
You had me on the. Now you're helping me obviously with the last reps of each one, but good rhythm, good movement, nothing catching despite all my injuries and
Right.
rebuilds. The most heroic, horrific aspect of that was the leg press.
Yes.
And we would do a thing which we ended up calling Bilbo's, as in Bilbo Baggins, as in the
Bilbo
original,
Baggins.
The
Yep.
Hobbit, there and back again. And so
There and
what
back
Evan
again
would
stories.
do is he would, and this is a proper, a proper leg press with 4 weight racks on it. And
Mhm.
he would put an extra plate or 2 on each side after every set and you have a rest and go again until the whole thing was full, which I think was somewhere between 1,200 and 1,400 pounds.
Right.
And then it got to the point where he couldn't save me, where if it crashed and I didn't get the break in, I just got to suck it up and be squashed until he frantically pulled stacks of weights off the side. That was his plan. But I loved it, even though I hated it. I loved it because
Right.
the body the body responds differently, particularly like me. You've done a lot of things. You've been really strong. You've had horrible injuries. You've come back, been really frail, and worked
Mhm.
your way up again. And sometimes as you get older, it's hard to shock your body into growing again. It doesn't want to respond the way it did when you were young, where you do a few curls for a few weeks in a row and your arms start growing. It's a little harder when you
Mhm.
when you're full of titanium pins and scar tissue. And I love the heavy weight, A, because it was exciting and challenging, but B, because once you've got 1,300 1,400 pounds on, you've got to lift that or you're going to get crushed. And
Yeah.
so that feeling of fear, I found worked for me. I think we've got some video. We'll put it up of some of those. These are rehab reps with Evan, and the feeling of fear helped motivate me to push correctly and get it going. But
Right.
I had to walk 2 miles to get home
Yeah.
after each workout, and I liked walking to the workout because my warm up then was just me getting there, and my cool down was me getting home. And I
Mhm.
remember sending you pictures. I'll see if I can post one where I fell down the stairs going
Yeah.
home because my legs were gone.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
now to
that was a
me,
common thing.
yeah.
That was a
And
common thing with a lot of my clients at that gym too. So
so I stopped taking the stairs and I started, even though we mocked the people who took the elevator, I started taking the elevator down after leg
shame.
works out because
Shame.
of what happened. I'll put this photo up of what happened to me of falling when my legs are just complete jelly. I guess the earlier point though. Off that, tremendous strength and endurance built up because you coached me to that level before the series.
Mhm.
When I fractured my pelvis, pain was tremendous. I knew I had a real problem, but
Mhm.
I feel like because the musculature was built up in that area from all those heavy leg presses and the rest of it, and the back from all those rows,
Mhm.
I was able to continue. Yeah, did it
Yeah.
suck? Yeah, it sucked, but fully functional,
Yes.
and so I think that training hard helps you to endure more. But as we
Mhm.
talked before, you've got to
What
still
you're
know
doing.
how your body is functioning. And I remember when I first got fractured ribs playing rugby,
Mhm.
is that you think, oh, I've broken my rib, I'm bleeding internally, and you're not. It's a
Right.
fairly moderate injury. It's painful and it hurts, but it's not a big deal. It's some of these things, and I think that's what you're saying is you have to treat yourself as a science project to a certain degree
Yeah.
and see what succeeds and what doesn't. But I would argue you've also got to be your own medic. You've
Mhm.
also got to go, okay, let's test that. This rib really hurts. Does it hurt when I do this? Does it hurt when I do that? And until you get a sense of it, when you have an injury, I guess my point is you have an opportunity for experimentation and growth, provided you don't, ruin your recovery process. An injury is an opportunity, is what I'm saying.
Yes, actually, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that um, the whole entire like test the hypothesis, you are your own scientist in that aspect. When you are injured, it's like, okay, what type of injury is this? Granted, the internet is great and vast, and there are a lot of good people giving out great information as far as like how to self-assess certain things. And if you're unsure, you can always, go to somebody who can help assess the situation better for you, so that you can take the right action after that. But as far
Absolutely.
as with the other point that you just said, as far as like, pain is an opportunity for you to grow, which I think that happens not only in the gym, but in life itself, whatever is
Mhm,
going through,
mhm.
whatever you're going through mentally or emotionally. It is kind of a thing where like, oh, this is a teachable moment right now. This is like something that is going to help me in the long run if I so choose. And that's a big thing too, is that like you have the choice. I think that we need to circle back to that third person that we talked about in the beginning, where the first two, one is going to just go through and to the point of pain
Till they break
and mess
themselves.
themselves. Yep, totally
Yeah.
break themselves. The second person is not going to listen to their body once they're broken and just continue to go and just do more damage. And then
Live
that
the
third,
lie. Yep.
exactly. And then that third person, the person who maybe again, like this is the last stage of that. I guess maybe they may all be the same person at one point in time, but
Yeah, I
that
think
third person,
that's true. We've all been that guy, right?
oh yeah, and that third person who has been broken, has had that a very severe injury, and then it just kind of crushes them, or
Mhm.
they've had a hard time in their life, and it devastates them, and like they never come back from that. I think that is, obviously there's empathy for those people, but when it comes to at least in the gym setting, you can it does come down to like the choice that you want to make, whether again like just to kind of give up on it completely, or choose to kind of see the lesson that is there and see what you can do. And now it's like, if like, oh, I can't bench press like I used to because I tore this and that. I'm like, okay, well, what can you do? Can you do maybe a chest machine? You'd still work that muscle. We just need to find the right exercise for you to do it. And then also,
Yes.
you need to, or like, let's address the issue. Let's find out, well, one, why did that happen in the first place? Two, how or what do we need to do in order for us to get back to at least a more functional, way of living? So if you injured like your shoulder and like you tore your rotator cuff, obviously it's like, if you need to get the surgery, but also rehabbing that muscle and re-strengthening the muscles
Mhm.
in that area, so that you are not only doing or being proactive, but you are actually going to help yourself in the future. And thirdly, it's like, okay, well, why did this happen in the first place? So maybe you were overcompensating, or the fact that you were just in not a great position. So maybe you need to relearn the movement itself and do the movement more properly than you were previously.
I love
Um,
that. I was going to say a lot of the time, um, you know, I think of you as a psychopathic sadist dick because you are. But there are other aspects about you that I just cannot praise enough. And you've touched on one already. You encouraged me to take the steps to do the exercises that I needed to do, even though they hurt, by taking steps to assess the injury and move forward. So I remember I'm the guy with the bad shoulder. I've had my left shoulder rebuilt a couple of times, had some big accidents. Now there are some bone spurs coming up for some of those fracture points, which happen. Surgically, I really only have one option left, and that is to get an artificial joint. I don't want to do that because that will limit some of my physical movement down the road. So I know it's going to come eventually, but I'm going to put it off as long as I can. So you encouraged me to look into it. I went and got x-rays. We saw the damage. We saw the movement restrictions. I was able to get advice. I was able to get some corticosteroid shots into the inflamed shoulder joint to allow a little bit less painful movement. And then you spent, I want to say, several weeks, if not a month or 2 months, just trying to redesign shoulder and chest movements that I could do. And in the end, we found a chest movement, for example. Bench pressing used to be my favorite thing, and now it's agony for me. And we ended up doing a dumbbell bench press, inclined and flat, with slightly angled, elbow slightly forward, and I can do it. And I can do it again. And I felt like, I know it's not a big thing, but I felt like a piece of my life that was gone had come back. And I can't thank you enough for the professional care that you took in encouraging me to take those steps. But those steps were crucial. Find out what the problem is. Don't guess. Don't get some drunk uncle in a bar who used to play football for Georgia. You've got to go and, unless, of course, he's now a physiotherapist or a doctor, but go and see a professional, get a real assessment, know what you have. Because one of the things that I love hearing from a doctor, whether it's a team doctor when I played rugby for the Army or something else, is they go, this is the injury. You can't hurt it anymore by doing what you're doing. You're able to do it. And that's what I had to hear from my orthopedic doctor, Brianne. And she used to work for the American U.S. rugby team, so the Eagles. So she would say, here's the damage. The good news is the pain is just that damage inflammation. Bench pressing and shoulder movements will cause you discomfort, but you won't be damaging yourself. So you're clear to do them if you act responsibly. And that green light gave me the confidence to do things that I couldn't mentally get over before. And I feel like that's a really important distinction between something hurting and something doing damage.
Right. And I mean, well, one, thank you for your praise, but honestly, man, you were the one that was patient enough to figure out the things too, because there are some clients that, just want to do things now, but understanding that it is a process of finding what works best for the individual when it comes to exercise selection.
It's true, because we're all different. We look vaguely the same, but we're all different.
Yeah, different body movements. I mean, again, there are some movements that work better for me that my buddies and I take our friend Ryan, for example.
Monkey helmet.
Yep.
Now he's a big guy. What is he, like 6'5", 6'6"? He's a tall.
So he's 6'4", but I mean, like
his hair makes him look. His hair makes him look 6'6". He's got a massive.
I think so too.
Head of hair. It's illegal. Someone like myself who's very little hair. I'm massively jealous. But it's like someone made a helmet out of hair and put it on his head.
Yep.
But he's a tall guy, very tall, a narrow, slim build, but super tall.
Right. So, him, so sometimes some of the lifts that I'd be great at, it would be a little bit tougher for him. So I know
he's in great shape too. He's in great shape.
He's in phenomenal shape. He's another, a great friend. And honestly, me and him, we learned a lot together while we were working at the gym.
I remember.
We weren't only co-workers, but for at a time we were roommates and we were training partners. So it's we really, honestly, we really kind of put our heads together and really came up with great stuff together as far as with exercise and learning and bouncing ideas off each other. But him, he's 6'4", I'm 5'10", and so certain things that may not work great for him work amazing for me. So I know that for me, deadlifting was one of my favorite things and still one of my favorite things to do. Whereas with him, it's just not as ideal. But it's he has longer limbs than I do.
Yeah, he has those supermodel legs. He's Elle Macpherson from the waist down.
Yep. I'm gonna tell him you said that.
Yeah, you do. And so that's when you got that kind of leg length, pulling up a deadlift is a different dynamic now.
Yeah, right. And so and the way in which that he would have to do it is very different than how I would have to do it. Just like pretty much like if you have long limbs and like a short torso like me and everything, it's going to be a little tougher to do certain type of squatting movements.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that like, I mean, I can squat now. I can actually squat. I'm back up to somewhat normal weights again after my like rehab of my injury. But as far as like, so you could probably see this a lot on social media, but you'll see a lot of people doing different styles of squatting, whether it be like a high bar squat where their knees are going way past their toes and they're going to like a really deep ass to grass squat. While
Mm-hmm.
some others do maybe what's called a low bar squat, where their knees don't necessarily go too far past their knees don't go too far past their toes, but they hinge back a lot more. And the reason for this is that like just the structure of the skeleton of the person, one may not be able to do it like the other. So for me, I know that I do a little bit better with more of like a low bar squat. It feels a little more comfortable for me. I could still do high bar squat too, but
Mm-hmm.
there are certain people that like they can't do one, but they could do the other one just fine. It just depends on your bone structure as well. So
I
it's
mean,
just finding the fit. Yeah.
sure. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I'm a guy with 7 knee rebuilds.
Mhm.
Squats are agony for me,
Right.
and I
Which
don't
is
do them
yeah.
really at all. And
Yeah.
you and I have come up with other things I can do that don't feel as good in terms of that wonderful buzz you get after squatting properly.
Right.
But at least I get some strength into my glutes and my quads. I
Yeah.
guess I guess one of the things that I've learned from you that rings true in so many aspects of life is that it's getting strong, staying healthy, preventing injuries, recovery from injuries. The one thing that has in common is just take the step. Do the small steps.
Yeah.
Don't be too proud to take the steps. And
Yeah.
also, so I just, whether you're getting into weights, I mean, yeah, you lift like a hero a year ago, but you've had an injury or you went away or you had a kid or you changed jobs and now you haven't had time, but now you're coming back. You don't pick up your max lift and do that. You don't run, try to set a record. You're going to get shin splints. You just take the steps, the little steps, and then you reap the rewards, or or on the negative side, you end up reaping the whirlwind. I think those are things that come out to me that has changed the way I approach it, because you can't make up for what you haven't done by doing too much.
Right.
You just
I
have to start again. And when you shrug off the ego aspect of it, it gets really easy. I just start again.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what you were just saying, it just reminds me of something I actually just saw on social media. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's a great like I feel like fitness influencer would like demean what he actually does, but like
Sure.
for the sake, like for lack of a better term, a fitness influencer who's very knowledgeable and great, like kind of bodybuilder esque, a natural
Sure,
bodybuilder type
sure.
of guy. He was talking about how like not or that comparison bias where it's like we compare ourselves to others or we compare ourselves to where we were when we were at our best, and that whole entire like focus on yourself type of mentality is not necessarily like the way to go, but it's more so focus on your values. What are the things that when you're striving for your values and not like comparing yourself to a past self that you may not be at currently, that's like when like that pursuit of continuing to structure your life in a way that's that you may not be as good as you were a couple years ago or a year ago before the injury. You be getting back there sooner, and like you won't even realize how fast you'll get there because you're focusing more so on the process itself
Yes.
instead of the end product. And I think that it's like more about that journey instead of the end. And
Mhm.
the end usually doesn't the end doesn't come until we're done, until we check out on this world. Like it's about like focusing on what can I do today that will help me get better for tomorrow, and focusing
Love
on
that.
the oh yeah, and just focusing on just like doing the small task every day, because those things compound over time, and eventually you'll look back and you'll see, holy crap, look how much ground I covered.
Yep.
And that's something that I think that is important for us all to really think about, as far as like, again, when it comes to injuries, we're all going to get them.
Yep.
We're not going to leave this life like unscarred. Like we're going to have our battles, we're going to have our scars, we're going to have our injuries. With that being said, it's like, what are you going to do? And when that adversity is facing you, what are you going to do about it? What is the thing that is going to help you get through this? And, again, you have your choices, and why not just make the choice to, like, well, I'm going to use this to get better. And if I can't do this, well, I'm going to find a way that would still be meaningful for me to do something else, but still go towards that same direction.
Oh, 100%. No, I love that. And I try to live it. There are times where you don't. And I guess the simplest way of saying it is that no matter what you do, you are making an investment in the future. And if you do something negative, then you're gonna pay the price for that. You'll make a loss. And sometimes you'll have a reason for doing it. I think I've told the story before where one of my injuries, I fractured my ankle on a parachute operation. It was the middle of the night. That's a lie. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning. And I landed on my own pack, fractured my ankle, and then I was carrying, 10 days worth of water and ammunition and gear. So it was a very heavy pack, probably weighed, over 200 pounds. I had to carry that 40 kilometers over the next 24 hours to get to the objective. So this is rocky desert. So it's about 25 miles, 26 miles, I guess, 40 kilometers. I'm not good at that conversion. In 105-degree heat, rocky desert, on a fractured ankle. I knew it was fractured, but I was leading a team. I couldn't stop. I didn't even take my boot off. I just gaffer tape around my ankle, around the boot. I didn't take it off for 9.5 days.
Yeah.
And I got through that, and that's great. That was expected of me in that situation. That's what I'm required to do. But I pay the price for that. Now, years later, in my early 50s, I got a lot of pain in these joints that I've hurt. Everything we do is an investment in the future. I remember you saying this the other day in a call and also on your Instagram, which is up on the YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, if you're listening by some other platform, it's at Coach_Evan Nelson, EVANNELSON. Follow him on Instagram and you can connect with him there. But you're talking about how you can even have time for a proper workout or a 45-minute workout, even if you have 15 minutes and you just do that, at least you're not sliding backwards and the base is there for you to grow on quicker when you come back. And I think it comes back to the central thesis, having the courage and the curiosity to find out what's actually going on and having the commitment to take the little steps and the humility. Because often the guys you look at, men and women who are super tough, one of the things they have in common is humility. They're able to, they might have a bit of braggadocio for show business or whatever, but the truth is they have that confidence because they have humbled themselves to take the little steps that aren't particularly glamorous. And I guess where I want to take this thesis next, for the time that we have left, is to apply this same principle of physical well-being, making a daily investment, your diet, your sleep, exercise that's relevant to your body type and your age and your outlet, whether you're going to be doing sport or just trying to stay healthy in regular life, you've got little kids, or you're an adventurer and you want to get out into the wilderness and you don't want to break down because of some niggling injury that you've had.
Yes.
Whatever it is, that principle of find out what's going on, get a proper opinion on that, and then take the little steps every day to get better, and applying that to mental health, because I see that being a huge problem with a lot of people of all ages and all backgrounds. And I want to go beyond the mental health but build on what you're talking about, mental health of people on social media, comparing your real life to someone's pretend perfect life.
Right.
And there's levels of, I wouldn't call it necessarily depression, but certainly this sense of failure, and that I see at its most extreme in people that go up, they get fired from a job and then go to the bank and shoot all their managers and so forth. At its most extreme is this sense of failure and this sense of hopelessness. And I guess the one thing I would say, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is we've all dealt with disappointments. I've had my own battles with depression in the past when I lost my military career because of a tropical lung infection I got, had to start my life completely over, came back from, as I said, many rebuilds. Both knees, shoulders, jaw, wrist, you name it, I've broken it. At a time when I thought I was going to lose my right arm below the elbow after I got an infection in my wrist. Stupid story. I crashed a dirt bike, desert racing, put my arm through my hand, And this is something Evan and I had to work on. How do we do some of these movements with this rebuilt wrist?
Right.
And then while it was still healing, the pins were still in it. I went to a wildlife project, picked up a baby wombat. It still
Oh, no.
weighed, 30, 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was wriggling, and it damaged the alignment and allowed some infection to get in. Got golden staph. And I remember the doctor saying, you might lose your hand. But before I got to that point, I was catching up with a friend of mine for breakfast. And I started to lose consciousness. I started passing out. The pain was so intense coming out of my arm. And of course, I couldn't see it because it was all in plaster.
Mm-hmm.
And the sweat, talk about that sweat.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm losing consciousness. I think I need to go to hospital. He said, let's go to hospital. I'm thinking, have a glass of lemonade or something, get the sugar up. But no, it was a bigger problem. And it ended up being this infection. If I hadn't gone to hospital when I did, I might have lost my arm.
Yeah.
But I just want to apply that principle to mental health. There's really no distinction between the two medically and, physical well-being and mental well-being in one and the other. But I would just say those are principles. Can we not apply them to our mental health? If you're not feeling your best, if you're losing hope, if you're feeling angry, if you feel like you're the victim of a great injustice all the time, if you feel like you're way behind your peers, if you feel like not getting up in the morning, or you just feel sorry for yourself all the time, that's the equivalent of the pain in your gut with your appendicitis. That's the radiating pain out of your arm. You're going to pass out. That's the moment to get a professional assessment and then start taking the little steps to mental wellness, right? Mental wellness is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's funny because I think the physical and the mental and emotional, they all work together. I think that, what I do find great about what I'm seeing now more than ever is that mental health is becoming less taboo. It's becoming more talked about.
Sure.
It's something that's, seeking out help, seeking out professional help is a big thing. I do think that, a lot of just the physical aspect of it, like the training aspect, it has it was kind of like it was the gateway into the other aspects of health, not just the physical, but the mental and emotional. And I think that as far as
yes.
no worries. And a lot of the things that you do in the gym, it can transfer out into the real world and into your life in other areas. Because there are going to be times where, the workouts aren't going to be great. They're going to, you're going to feel like crap. You're not going to hit the PR that you wanted to. You're not you're going to I guess all the disappointments, all the roadblocks, all the injuries or the hiccups along the way. You're going to have that. It's that's the physical adversity, but it kind of translates into the adversity that you have in your life where, you are going to lose somebody that you're close to.
That's right.
It's going to happen. I mean, there are going to be losses that you're going to have throughout this life, and they are going to come for all of us.
Absolutely.
And that's not something to fear. It's something that to understand that it is going to happen. It is okay to feel hurt. It is okay to feel the emotions that you're feeling. It's what's not okay is to either try to avoid those feelings or try to shut out those feelings or ignore those feelings and let them go. Either let them go just kind of
fester,
on their own. Yeah. And so and let it build up to where it does become a thing where it's overwhelming and that it takes control over you. I think that as far as it's okay to have feelings and to, experience all the realms of each emotion, but it's you shouldn't let your emotions become your master. You need to master your emotions.
I love that.
And I think that as far as having professional help, I mean, again, I have also had my bouts of depression and anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even me myself, I do go to therapy. I think that it's a good thing for
that.
It's a thing where I think that a lot of people can benefit from it. And sometimes going to and finding the right therapist for you can be tough.
That is true. So just ask on that. I mean, that's the thing, and you don't need to name names, but I remember, I'll come back to what I experienced a while ago, but I remember that first, I ended up, I think my third or fourth therapist that I met with when I needed help was the one that I really connected with. But I had some issues with the first couple, and it was lousy. It's just like you have a car and you need to go to a mechanic, not all, or the body shop. They're not all the same. Some
Right.
charge too much. They do lousy work. It's just the reality,
Yes.
and that's true of every profession. Don't accept that you have to accept what's on offer. You can keep looking, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and and in my business as well as being a personal trainer, there are some people that they've had one personal trainer and they had a horrible experience, and so they paint the rest of the industry of personal trainers as like, oh, they're good for nothing. Like, I got injured from having a trainer. It's like they didn't know
Yeah,
what they're doing, and
that
like
sounds
they charge
accurate.
too much, you know. but it's I've had clients that have had bad trainers before me, and again, I say bad because that's what they say. Maybe like
Well,
again, they were at a point in their career where it's like they hadn't learned what they learned yet. Um,
well,
but
anyone goes to the gym and has a look around, you see someone having a training session, and you'll see. First of all, you want to. It's like whether it's getting a haircut or buying clothes or something where you want the person to demonstrably show that they're some sort of competent person by embodying the values you're hoping to achieve, right?
right,
So you
mhm,
don't want to train them that's out of shape. They clearly don't live the path that you want to
mhm,
follow.
right,
How many times have you seen very happy clients and very happy trainers, and they're both fat and they're both talking the whole time? They're
yeah,
not lifting
yeah. I
now,
mean, I
and
think we could see
or
that there was some of that at when we were having our sessions too.
sure.
There was like we can definitely see that. I think that a lot of the granted, it's like whenever people would see us train, it would almost be kind of entertainment because it's like, what is Barnaby gonna do today?
Barnaby is a reference to Adventure Beast. But it's and then you'll find trainers that are just vicious and they're hurting their clients. You can see that.
Right.
I think that's true of every professional, that you've got to find the person that's right for you. I know when I
Yeah.
first suffered from depression, when I lost my military career, my whole life plan went down the toilet. I got a tropical respiratory infection while training, doing a job in the Air Force Sea. And that was it. I was out of the Special Forces line. I couldn't go to the SAS. I couldn't do a lot of things I wanted to do. And I had the choice of becoming an instructor at the School of Infantry, which is a great job, but not the job I wanted. I was already, lined up for a heavy weapons specialty unit. So I wanted that. And that was
Mhm.
taken away. So an instructor or a desk job. I just absolutely not for me at that
Right.
time in my life. Just got my wings and my beret. I had no intention of doing those things. Now, I wasn't aware of mental health issues enough at that time to appreciate that I was depressed. I became a bit of a shut in. I didn't really go out anymore. And the one thing that got me through was, by that point, having just got out of the paratroopers, I had such a clear physical routine.
Mhm.
I was out by 6 and I was running. I moved to a suburb by the beach, which was very nice. And I would just run every morning and do push-ups and do chin-ups because I've been doing that for so many years, it just seemed natural to do that. And then
Yeah.
when I had spare time on my hands, I would go and exercise some more. And I
Mhm.
guess for me, and I think for a lot of people, physical mastery is a gateway to mental mastery. And if you
Yes.
can just motivate yourself to do these little steps, and then eventually you get your head around. But certainly in that time, at least then I stayed physically healthy. It took
Mhm.
me about 2 years to struggle through it and sort of find my footing to launch the second career of my life. And with all respect to Scott Fitzgerald, there is no second act. You can go to hell. There definitely is. There's as
Right.
many acts as you need. And I just, if I could go back to that younger version of myself and say, hey, it's great that you're staying healthy. Go and speak to a professional about your mental health. Instead of
Yes.
taking 2 years to get through the other side of that, I might have been out in a couple of months. I might have
Right.
been enjoying my life more fully, having better friendships and relationships, being more successful what I was doing. And I just think, wow, I was ignorant and young and it was kind of taboo in those days. But later in life, went through some breakups, had some health issues, and I could feel that my world getting smaller and darker and not
Mhm.
feeling optimistic. I remember when my dogs died, they got out, killed the neighbor's sheep, and my 3 Great Danes got put down.
Mhm.
And I just felt like I'd betrayed my family. and I just feel everything. You know what? Now I had the life experience to go, okay, I'm going to surround myself by family
Mhm.
and I'm going to go see somebody.
Yeah.
And I got my head put straight very quickly because a lot of the stuff we get hung up on, like this is silly, but for example, let's say you did a presentation at work and
Mhm.
then you realize the zip on your jeans is down.
Yeah.
You laugh and we feel like an idiot. But there are some times when your mental state is such where that becomes a really big deal. Oh, just another way I've embarrassed myself. I'm a loser. I'm a this.
Right.
And if you look around, particularly in the US or we are right now, there's a lot of angry young men who really just feel like a failure. They feel like they've missed out. They don't have a relationship. They don't have the job they want. They don't have the respect they feel they deserve. And instead of turning that positive desire into positive action through small steps, they've decided to reframe it as injustice and self-pity. And
Right.
now they want to hurt somebody so people know how they're hurting. And I know this from doing those books, Penguin Bloom with the Bloom family, and then the movie, which you can also watch on Netflix, by the way. I'm just saying, when she broke her back and I first started working with her on her first book, her primary goal, she wanted everybody to know how much she was hurting.
Mhm.
That's all she really wanted. And so all the time that we spent, and we would do a Zoom interview for about 6 hours every day,
Mhm.
making notes and asking her about it. I would say for the first 2 to 3 months, it just kept coming back to, in one way or another, I want people to suffer as I have suffered, or at least appreciate how much I have suffered. And I kept having to say that's not helpful to them. You know,
Right.
that doesn't make anybody want to be with you or like you if all you want to do is tell them you're in pain. You have to somehow channel that pain, which is a powerful life force, just like fear with the
Mhm.
Bilbos. It motivates you to do something instead of trying to bring others down or hurt others. How can you turn that pain to motivate you to take actions that are positive and then share the best of yourself with others? And to her credit, she got that help. And, you know, now she's a multiple time world adaptive surfing champion. She's back in the water, which is what she wanted.
Yeah.
It was a tough journey for her. Every day is a battle for you when you suffer from any kind of spinal cord injury. But I think that was the thing that I came out of it. Now, if I could just go back in time to younger me, and
Mhm.
if there's anyone listening right now that's going through anything like this, if I could do it all over again, I would go and see a professional. If I felt the connection, I would stay with him. If I didn't, I would go and see another one. And I would let them put me at ease because a lot of stuff you're worried about isn't stuff you need to worry about.
Yeah.
And conversely, there are some things you may not be aware of that if you are aware of them, you need to take action.
Totally.
And I would put myself on a path to take steps to make myself better, my life better. That's what I would do
Yeah.
if I could go back in time.
It's again, like when always like the hindsight and everything of like going back. I think that as far as, you said something when you were saying all of that, I was thinking, you know, sometimes though, in our youth, especially for young men, takes us a little
Mhm.
while to kind of let things kind of click.
Yep.
So because I have those thoughts too, where I'm like, man, if I can go back in time and tell my younger
Mhm.
self this and this, like this is like I'd be, there'd be I'd be so like experiencing so much more, or I would have experienced so much more. But I think that one thing that we do is like we do need to live that experience first so that we can actually understand it and appreciate the knowledge that we now have.
That's
Because I
true.
because I think that like we can go back to our younger selves and tell them this knowledge that we have now. But I think that at the same time, at least I know for myself, my younger self would have still had to go through it and experience it to
Maybe.
understand more so what I'm actually talking about. And so I have a much more greater appreciation for the things that I have now or the things that I've learned and the knowledge that I've acquired. I do think when it comes to um, the appreciation of things or even like the not being stuck in like the being a forever victim or a victim mindset. One of the books that really kind of helped me with that was actually Viktor Frankl's Man Searches for Meaning.
Mm.
When this guy was like in the Nazi concentration camps, and the thing that got him through was reframing his experience of thinking, well, what I'm experiencing right now, like he pictured talking about it or like reframing it as a teachable lesson years down the line teaching it to a classroom. And I think that as far as like when you are faced with that adversity, and like that you are going through the thing, it's going to take you as long as it needs to in order for you to learn the lesson that is there, so that you can pass it on to the next person that may need it. And granted, like sometimes that person may hear it, but they may not be listening.
No,
Or it
that's
may be listening, but maybe not hearing it, and vice versa.
the different
But
times when yeah, that's the truth. It's got to be receptive. And, I think the thing that I look at now that I have benefited from, and I get this from a lot of young friends who want to break into some of the industries that I'm in.
Mhm.
How do I do this? How do I do that? Is to never accept the status quo as far as the linear path of you do study this, and then you get that, and you start at this level and you work your way up. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We can all do that.
Yeah.
But it's the doing the additional things that leapfrog some of those moments that are slow and tedious, or put you at the whims of other people in positions of power who can make determinations on your behalf. And we all
Right.
hate that.
Of course.
And I talk about it as time travel. There is a way to time travel. And if you can't wait till you're my age. And obviously you can see from Evan, he's probably 10, 20 years older than me. He looks basically like a corpse,
Yeah.
covered in
Obviously.
foreskins. But the point is, you get to a certain age and you take for granted that you know all these things because you've done it. You've broken these bones. You've had this surgery. You've fallen in love. You've had your heart broken. You've had kids. You've built a company. You've lost it. You've done this. You've done that. And I can come back from this. I can come back from this. I know how to do this. These are all things you can do with experience. But if you wait in line for a lot of this stuff, it just doesn't happen for you. You end up being on the treadmill forever. And
Right.
and I say there is a way to time travel. All you have to do is do more, a little bit more that you like. So, for example, if you want to get into publishing, which is one of my professions, yeah, you can work on your manuscript and you can hand it in and you can wait. Or while you're still studying, you can be writing articles and get published. And if you can get published in the school newspaper, then with a little bit more work. And I usually talk about it as the 100-400 rule, which is just a rule that I made up. But that is, twice as much effort, so 100% more effort, which isn't that much for most activities. If I ask you to have 100% more sandwich, it means you eat a second sandwich. You can live. So 100% more effort to go from a school newspaper to a mainstream commercial newspaper. But now it's a 400% return because it's not just your friends, and family. Now it's a larger circle of friends, family, and colleagues, and the general public. They've all seen what you've done. You're on the map. And you can keep doing that, slightly more effort to get a much bigger return. And then sometimes 400% is actually, I'm understating it. It can be 1,000 times. It can be 10,000 times. You get a viral post or whatever on a platform, it can go huge.
Yeah.
But that little bit of extra effort, and now you're someone who's done something else. And then you say, okay, and I'm very much against the heroic sacrifice. That's just Hollywood BS. You got to throw yourself on a landmine or a grenade to be a hero. No. This is not life or death. This is just life and life.
Right.
And you need the little things. So you give up some of the little tiny expenses in order to get a better computer or better Wi-Fi, or to save up for a trip to go somewhere different, or to become an intern somewhere, or to become an unpaid assistant on, I don't know, the orangutan orphanage in Borneo. And now you've got all these experiences that no one else has in your same peer group, and you still lived the same amount of time, but you're actually ahead of them. It's like you've jumped 5-10 years ahead in your life. You've time traveled. And now you're at a point where you are more employable, more interesting, and your momentum is much higher. I feel like that's what I tell people to coach them when they're young and coming up. But I would apply that to mental health and physical health as well, is that you just make those little efforts, just the little ones, and practice your knots. At home you got a piece of string, you're sitting on a boring Zoom at work, work on your knots. Go for a walk. When I was trying to get into the paratroopers, I would go for a jog with a backpack full of bricks. Now I can't do that at my age now. I think my legs would just literally snap off like pretzels. But the point is, not everyone was doing that, even in that group. And so when I turned up, I expected to pass. And because I'd earned that right. But now in terms of mental health, I get tired. I've had a tough 2 years health-wise. When I hurt my back after writing the Penguin Bloom books, I thought I had a serious spinal injury. I had this shearing pain down my legs. My left foot was dragging. I was really scared. I thought I'd done serious damage to my spinal cord. And guess what I'm doing to come out of it? I've gone to the experts. I've done the chiro. I've done the physio. I've had the back injections. I've decided not to get the surgery because I want a more mobile back going forward. And I'm doing the baby weights.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's again, starting it comes back to starting off where you are and then going and then building on top of that. Again, and if that means like starting with the baby nibs as
that's
everyone said.
we call nibs. Niblets are when you get a half weight. So let's say you're doing there's 25s and 30s, and then there's 27 and a half. That's called a nib. And so we were training one day. It's going pretty well, and Evan was killing me. And this guy, I can't remember who he was. He's lovely. We call him Blue, but he played for the Atlanta Falcons. And he's he's not a huge guy like a cornerback. He's super chunky, but he's not like he's super fit, but he's not like a huge man.
He's thick. He's a thick,
and
thick
fit
fellow.
and strong as hell. He's special.
Yes.
Funny guy. And I remember I wanted to drop to, let's just say for the sake of argument, drop by 5 pounds. And it wasn't there. Someone had taken the weight. And I was like, no. And I'm exhausted. And he goes, just take these. And they're like 2.5 pounds. I'm like, I go, no, I don't want to do it. And he goes, nothing but a niblet. It's nothing but a niblet. So now he's saying no nibs rule. Never quit on it. You got to take that greater weight. You got to go up by 2.5.
Yep.
But it's just the little nibs,
Exactly.
And I think that's what's given me great comfort coming back from serious injuries and fatigue and illness and even mental health.
Yeah. And I think that
it's just little steps.
Oh yeah. And I think that also comes with life. A couple things to unpack. Actually, the first thing is that the main thing from everything that you were just saying is like how to get ahead and how to time travel is taking more action. You can read all the books, you can acquire all this knowledge, but unless you do something with it, that's all it is just knowledge. It's potential power. It's not power. You need to actually take the action.
There it is.
And also inaction is an action in itself, but it's not but you want to be proactive in your life and not be waiting around, like you were just saying, for something to happen. Because if you're waiting around, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen when the time has already passed.
I love that. There's people out there that are ready to help you.
Yes.
But ultimately, you have to
help
do
yourself.
The work. And the good news is the work is not overwhelming. It's small steps.
Yes.
And a lot of people are going to tell you things and it's going to be wrong. They're going to mean well. They're not you. I know my grandfather, who I love, the dairy farmer, Ernie, who died of throat cancer, even though he never smoked a day in his life and all the rest of it, didn't drink. He just super healthy man, but that's what happened to him. I remember him telling me, giving me life advice. And it was like, if you go back and watch that fabulous old film, The Graduate, with Dustin Hoffman.
Oh yeah.
Like get into plastics, and he would say wheat and milk. He says, get into wheat and milk, become grow wheat or milk cows, because people are always going to need breakfast cereal and milk. And he was right in the broad sense, but completely wrong. Those markets are now dominated by conglomerates that control prices, and the actual farmers get almost nothing. He couldn't see that coming. He meant well. He wasn't wrong. He couldn't see what was going to happen. So what I would say is trust your gut. You're a smart person. You got this far. Just treat mental health just like physical health. Make an investment, get that expertise, and take those steps, because you're the one that will get yourself out of it. And if you feel yourself succumbing to self-pity, that is the wake-up call. If you're like, why does this always happen to me? As soon as you start feeling like that, or everyone has a better life, when it's going to be my turn, it's never going to be your turn until you make it your turn. And you do that by taking action in your own best interests.
Yeah. And usually with that is like, why is it always me? It's usually you're the common denominator. So it's more of like kind of reflecting back, or like, okay, so what is it about me that this always happens? So why, like you need, whenever you're like facing adversity, you're facing the same thing over and over again, and you're like, this always happens to me. It's you can take it in the way of like that self-pity, or the like, I'm like, why can't I get to this place like Joe over here, or Jason over there? Like I can't keep up with these guys. Why are they getting the things that I want, but I'm not getting that? You need to like kind of turn it inward and see what are the things that I'm doing that's causing me not to get what I want, and what actions can I take in order for me to get there? Almost kind of reverse engineer it. So it's like, okay, I want
Hmm.
this big goal, but I'm nowhere close to that goal. So I mean, if you want to get to the top of the mountain, it's like you're not instantly going to be right at the top. No, you're first gonna you have to do like a couple of zigzags up that mountain in order to get
Yeah.
there in one piece. So you need to have a game plan of like, okay, we need to break it down into smaller goals and smaller habits so that you eventually get there. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. And even with a lot of my clients, I mean, again, I do train people in person, but I also train online. So people
Hmm.
that are not in my area, a lot of the things that I really like to focus on, because not every client is going to have the amount of time to do like a 5 or 6 day a week program, or like they don't have as much of a gym access as others may.
Sure.
But it's about meeting them where they're at and saying like, okay, well, great, what
Yeah.
can you do? So I'm
Meet them
like,
where they're
well,
at.
it's like we'll focus on getting more steps in. We'll focus on controlling like what is it that we're eating, and not making crazy changes, making
Mm.
changes that like are going to be comfortable enough to
Yeah,
you
you
to
can stick
do.
with them because if you take
Exactly.
away all the things I enjoy eating,
Yeah.
I'm guaranteed within a period of time, I'm going to wake up tired, wake up sick. I'm going to eat whatever it is you told me not to eat, and
Yep.
then I'm going to feel like the whole thing's broken.
Yep.
It's got to be flexible. It's got to be something
Exactly.
that I love. That meet them where they're at. I remember one of the mottos of one of the units I was in was "Come as you are." So you
Yes.
go to battle as
Yep.
you are,
Exactly.
and you've got to make it work.
Yeah. And that goes for life. Like go like any goal that you have, start where you're at and
Yeah,
focus on what you can do immediately. Like focus on just that first step. Don't focus on steps 5, 6, and 7. Focus on step 1,
yeah.
because that's all you can do right now.
Nothing
Like
wrong
you
with
can't
having the
get to
big
the
goal, but it's yeah, you got to do. I was going to say one thing um, about that, just that you mentioned earlier, that really,
Mhm.
you know, rang true for me, and that is when your clients are with you and talking to you,
Yeah.
you are the sounding board they trust,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that validates their concerns and sometimes makes the concerns disappear. Same with mental health. One of the great things about speaking to a therapist about whether it's grief or depression or anxiety, doesn't really matter. Whatever is preventing you from being the person you want to be. And remember, in the context of our whole Bushmaster thing, when you're out there on your own and you're relying on yourself, it becomes critical that you have mental clarity on what you can and can't do. Otherwise, you
Right.
can blow the whole operation. So going to see a therapist is a way of having that trusted sounding board to speak aloud the things that
Mhm.
are holding you back, and having someone hear that and saying from an objective and professional position, here's something for you to think about. And that's how you get that awareness sometimes,
Mhm.
where you ask someone like me, for example, okay, what's your diet like, whatever, and instead of going, oh, it's been pretty good, I go, well, okay, I ate this and I ate that, and I've been eating these ice creams and blah, blah, blah. And you go, okay, that's cool. But now you've added 2,000 calories to your day. You're going to need to add another 40 minutes of walking to get whatever it is.
Right.
There's always a way forward,
Yeah,
right?
and yeah, and even with kind of something like that as well, where you're like, I like you're 2,000 calories up. Um, Again, breaking it down to like what, instead of like kind of taking away something. Again, you said like adding in like an extra thing of cardio, which like for that specific day, sure. I would say adding in or finding adding in things to help so that you don't have as much room for the stuff that is
There you
excess,
go.
right? So and that's another thing too, another thing for like clients that like I have an honest conversation about their eating. I'm not here to judge how you eat.
Mm-mm.
It's not about that. You don't need to feel that you have like don't feel the need to try to impress me, because that's not why you paid for
No,
me.
no,
It's
exactly.
and I'm not here to be impressed. I'm here to help. And so when you tell me, oh, it's pretty good, it's this, it's that, and I'm like, great, but just give me like a full breakdown of everything you ate. Like you went to that party. What did you have? Like, did you have any cocktails? Great. Listen, I like a good cocktail myself. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
hell
like
yeah.
I'm a human being too. we enjoy things, but it's okay to enjoy things. But if you're not honest and like honest with yourself, you're not going to be able to know what you need to actually add or subtract. And sometimes the best thing is like a subtraction from addition. So when you add in more of the good stuff that you need, you're
Yeah.
not going to have as much room for the quote unquote bad stuff that you typically have. And also having a breakdown of like, like, I guess like that's the thing of being honest with yourself
Yeah.
and learning more about yourself and having a growth mindset and a forever student. And even if like, you are somebody that's finishing school, don't think that your learning stops there. If anything, your learning starts there. Your
Oh,
learning
yeah.
starts more so after you get done with school than you do
Ongoing
when you were in school.
education. And the same as
Yeah.
if you're in prison and you're listening to this and your life's going to start over. That's a pretty extreme example, but I'm sure there's some
Of course.
listeners that are in prison right now and
Yeah.
or feel that they're in prison. But if you're actually physically in prison, you come out, the world will have moved on without you. It's on
Right.
you to catch up. You can do it. Small
Of course.
steps will get you there. And if your life is less extreme than that, coming back from a big setback like prison and so forth, then it's going to be that much faster for you. I guess, one of the things that I think about from my time in the Green Machine was, the whole idea of walking wounded. And walking wounded is, you've been wounded in battle, but you can still move yourself. You're still under your own control.
Mhm.
And so we don't have to medevac you. You can just make your way back to the medics, or you can do what you got to do. Maybe you can continue in the fight. Perhaps put in a fire support role rather than the assault team. Bunch of different things. I remember when I was a machine gunner and I jumped out of this armored vehicle. We were practicing these assaults, and I jumped straight onto a rock and I tore my kneecap open, like
Ooh.
just hanging off there. But I was
Yeah.
so pumped up, I crawled another, 150 yards doing the drill till I got to the end of it. And by then there's just blood everywhere. And my best friend, Steve Nichols, who was the best man at my wedding, he went to artillery because he was too smart and too pretty for infantry. And he said, I pulled it up to show the officers, look, I've got a problem with my knee. It was very cool in those days to underplay everything. So you just go, oh, excuse me, sir, I seem to have a problem with my knee. And I lift up my my fatigues, and my kneecap's just hanging there like a fractured Christmas ornament. And Steve Nichols just sucks his finger and stuck it in the hole and goes, does that hurt? And the directing staff for the Royal Military College just went all green, was about to vomit.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point is, I was too proud. I'm not getting stretched back. I'll wrap this with a shell dressing. I put my pack on my back, and I walk my way back behind the lines, back to the medics to start getting treatment. We sewed up in the field, all the rest of it. Then there were consequences for that too. But the point is, when I went to hospital, I had to get surgery in hospital on that knee. And military hospitals are very different to civilian hospitals. Everybody has to be up at 6 o'clock, just like normal. And you have to make your own bed with clean sheets. They don't have all the nurses and stuff come around to make your bed for you. Unless there's one guy who did, and he had both legs missing. And they said, okay, we'll make an exception for you. But the rest of us, even on one leg or whatever else, you got up. And I remember having a broken jaw once and having to do it. You just get up and you make your bed. The walking wounded thing really resonates with me, because in life, I know you lost someone very dear to you last year, mate, and I know that's still with you, and you've been through a lot in that regard. All of us have lost people that we love. We're going to lose more.
Yep.
And we've all had physical injuries. We've all had mental health concerns. We've hurt ourselves mentally or been hurt, and we're healing. I think one of the more positive things that helps me through life when I've had setbacks is I consider myself walking wounded. I'm hurt, but I'm still under my own steam. I can still do things that are positive. Yeah, I can do the basic little things like making the beds, make the kids food. I can at least go to do a light workout in my garage downstairs, go for a walk around the block. And I'm grateful that my injuries aren't so great that I can do those things. But instead of thinking that I was perfect and now I'm imperfect, I just go, you know what? I'm walking wounded. And there is something heroic in the most beautiful sense of saying, I'm hurt, but I can carry on.
Yes.
And I can look after myself, and I can heal, and I can get better. And I absolutely want to emphasize the fact that Evan and I have been saying the whole way along, mental health and physical health are one and the same.
Yes.
and never be afraid to ask for help in either aspect. And indeed, asking for help is a show of courage, and it's the best way to get on track to taking the small steps, and they are small, in order to recover the best of yourself, to be your best self moving forward. So I guess the thought that I would leave you with, and I'll throw it to you, Evan, for your closing thoughts. But my thought is, it's walking wounded is nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of, to carry on, even though you have the burden of grief or physical injury or illness. You're walking wounded in the army. We are proud of you. You're not dragging people back. You are dragging yourself forward, and we are in awe of that, and we respect that. And I say that is the attitude as a Bushmaster you carry out in the field. Be the person who accepts the misfortunes of life and rises above it by not wallowing in self-pity, but rather by having the courage to push yourself to take the small steps to make your life better and, in turn, the lives of those around you. Mate, what do you think?
No, I think that's beautiful. I think hearing this, it reminds me of the quote of that monologue from Rocky Balboa. You know,
Which one?
oh man, like Rocky's talking to his son, and it's like life ain't sunshines and rainbows. It's gonna beat you to your knees if you let it. And it's like the whole entire where it's like life is gonna be hard. Life is hard. You know, we do live in a time period where life is fairly easy. It doesn't mean that it actually is easy. It still
No.
is hard. We still have challenges that we go through. And that adversity is always going to find us. And that is something that is, you don't have to look at it in a way of fear, but looking at it as a thing of like, okay, like I understand that this too shall pass. This is going, like, it is part of life. And if life was just easy the whole entire time, it would be boring. You need to have these hard times in order for us to grow, and know that you're going through this because it's going to help make you better, if you so choose. And knowing that like you do have a choice in the matter, not of what happened to you, but how you respond to it. You need to know that like I think the Stoics would say like that, they can't take away your reasoned choice. So
No.
it is for you to know that your choice is. Oh, I'm sorry, have my little puppers coming in here, but yeah,
That's nice.
so little Cooper. But as far as like with your when it comes to the adversity and like the challenges that you do go through, know that like one, you're not alone. If you're facing something, know that is probably common to somebody else.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're not alone in this. And if you are going through some deep depression, if you are having anxiety, know that you're not alone in that, and that you can seek out help, and that you can go to communities that will have similar experiences, so that you don't feel as alone. That you could
And
actually,
you and I have, and we've
yes,
benefited from that.
big time,
Yeah.
and it brings you closer. And I think that it's
Oh,
like, as far as bringing like a finding communities that help you, not like help you up and not bring you down, and
right.
finding the people that like want to see you win, and want to see you do your best, and want you to be your best self, and that you want to do better, not only for yourself but for them. And just know that it's like it does come down to you, and it's not a thing where it's all on you. Don't think of it as a pressure, or like as this thing of like I can't escape it, but think of it as like, oh, I'm actually more in control than I think, because you do have
But
control over your life, in the aspect that, again, whatever
yes,
happens to your life, you're
it's
like
so
you're
true.
in the driver's seat.
It's so true. There's so many times where you thought this is a big, big deal. And when you speak to someone who, on the other side of it, who's been through that and more, and
Mhm.
they're like, hey, it's okay. You're doing all right. And sometimes sometimes you have to relearn how to do things. I know
Yeah.
I had to completely learn how to write again with my right hand after it was rebuilt.
Mhm.
I looked like, some crazy ink on the foot of a chicken running over the page. It was terrible. This is a
Right.
guy who was a cartoonist for the newspaper. I couldn't control my hand. I
Mhm.
learned how to use my hand again, stupid little exercises. Um, and it's like, it's okay. It'll get there. But also just things that seem impossible, and it seemed like a complete mess, and you're so embarrassed and you're so frustrated, not enough money, not enough this, not enough that. And you're actually not doing that badly. You're pretty close to making it ahead. And I don't want to keep going in circles with this, but I really think that you got to find that safe space to vent and get it off your chest. And I use the word safe space, which is, often maligned. But what I mean is sometimes there's a level of physical anxiety and frustration and rage and grief, and you got to go to the gym and lift tonnage. You want to get it out of the system.
Yes.
That is a safe space for that physical outlet. It's not okay if you throw around the furniture in your house or someone at a bar. That is not okay. That is not a safe space. So I don't just mean a safe space for you. I mean a
Right.
safe space for others. And
Yes.
likewise, there are things and concerns and fears. It's not okay to dump that on a taxi driver or a barman or a stranger or someone you go on the first date with. The safe space for that conversation is with a mental health professional, a counselor professional. It's such a relief to get the poison out of your system.
Yeah, it's productive and destructive. There are productive forms that you can take out, either like the anxiousness, the aggressiveness of it all. There are positive ways that you can take that frustration, that anger and anxiety, and you could put it into something that's going to be productive and that's going to be beneficial to you and others, instead of it having to be kind of destructive and subtractive from you and everyone else around you.
100%. So, some of the listeners heading out into the bush tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but next month, let's just say, what are a few basic exercises you can do with either light weights or no weights at home to improve your physical durability in the field? Some sort of core exercises, the things that would just make it easier to carry a pack and to get up day in, day out when you're going to be a little bit tired.
Right. So, I mean, it comes down to the basics. I mean, granted, it's if you are any type of squat movement, a squat or a lunge movement, if that's like body weight squats, if that's lunges, reverse lunges, if you have a pack with you, you can use that as resistance. Or you could even do if you have the pack and you have jugs of water, you can do a hinge movement. So like think of like a Romanian deadlift to kind of help with that back, the glutes, hamstring, like the whole posterior chain to help you to help with that durability. I would pair that with a core exercise, kind of like a plank, side planks. You could do some bird dogs or dead bugs. Now, I can't show you right now, but if you were to look
dead
up
dead bugs are great. When you lie on your back and you basically thrash them around like a dying beetle,
yes,
and it really
but
works your
controlled
core.
dying beetle.
Yes, a control. I have to say, coming back from this, semi-catastrophic back injury, I've been doing a lot of squat holds.
Yes,
and I have found them to be unpleasant, but incredibly beneficial. And I've been doing a lot of dying beetles, because for my gut to hold my back in place.
Yes.
And can I tell you that not the massage, not the chiro, nothing has helped more for the shocking back nerve pain than those two things. Even though I don't enjoy either of them, and I think you're a dick for suggesting them, I incredibly helpful. Can I just add one thing? Just because you're in the field doesn't mean you don't have to stretch. And if you get up in the morning, you've slept on the ground, you're feeling a bit stiff and sore, get up, just do some basic stretches. And I'm not Mr. Yoga, I'm not Mr. Flexible. I'm really not, I'm all twisted up with titanium pins and scar tissue. I basically look like a giant piece of jerky with a beard, right? I'm very stiff. But if you get up in the morning and you do your stretches of all your key joints, your back, your legs, your arms, your shoulders, you will have a better day. Because if you wake up stiff and your body's out of alignment, you put a pack on, you hump up a mountain, now you're feeling real bad because you're out of alignment. And some of the biggest injuries I saw in the bush, and certainly in the paras, were guys who'd blown out a knee in the jump, and God bless them, they toughed it out, walking wounded, but then they blew out their other knee because they're walking badly. And so anything that helps you keep alignment and keep your flexibility is a great thing. And you can do it in the field just like you can do it at home.
Yes, I think definitely. I agree with that. I think that when you're tight, it makes it easier for injuries to happen. So, I mean, and you just kind of knocked it on the head. Like, you don't have to be in the bush. Like, you can get up and you can sleep wrong,
Yeah.
and that can throw off your day. And especially if you go to the gym and you lift heavy weight, and after you slept wrong and you're not doing the stretches, then you're more susceptible to injury as well. So yes, like stretching in the mornings, and stretching throughout the day too.
That's a good point.
And
Just like brushing your teeth after meals. Just
yeah,
imagine you ate some sort of stinky, garlicky, smelly fish thing,
yeah,
and you got to brush your teeth after every meal. Feeling a bit stiff, have a stretch as part of, rather than just sit down,
yes,
have a stretch.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I'd say, um, on top of that is just stretching. And then the one thing that you were saying about the dead beetles, the dead bugs, were the thing
Hmm.
that really helps with your back pain the most.
Hmm.
One part of like the therapy process is obviously working with the tight muscles, or like all the jacked up muscles that you need to get worked on. But that's only part one of it. That's not going to
Hmm.
solve it. The other part of that is to actually strengthen that muscle, because again, the reason why it is tight in the first place is because it is actually weak. So
Right.
you need to kind of massage it out and stretch it, but also strengthen it so that it doesn't occur again, or that that you become a little bit more durable in that way as well.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
And then here's the BTG tip if you're heading in the field for a big trip. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but always put the heaviest part of your stuff in the top of your pack, not the bottom. And that'll balance it better. Otherwise, you'll end up destroying your lower back. And, even with these new anti-gravity packs that sit on your hip bone, you don't want that weight sitting right on your base of your spine. So you put the heavy stuff at the top. So basically, if you're a supermarket bag packer, do the reverse of what they do. They put the eggs on the top, you put the eggs on the bottom in this case, and put the heavy milk and stuff on the top. Um, that's part of your preparation, is learning how to pack to increase the stability and the balance of your body, and not to fight against you, because that is exhausting. Mate, Evan, it's great to see you again. Appreciate your wisdom. I don't know anyone who's helped more people back from the verge of death than you physically. You've also been someone I've always enjoyed talking to. Thank you for coming on to Semi-Indestructible. It's been awesome to have you.
Of course. So thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. I'm very grateful for being here and talking with you, man. It's always great talking to you. And again, I just appreciate being on. So thank
It's
you.
legend. And anyone wants to follow up, get some advice, hit him up on Instagram at coach_Evan Nelson, EVANNELSON, aka Nelly, aka No Neck, Evan No Neck Nelson, aka 22, aka Viking Bragg Pitt, aka the prick that invented Bilbo's. You're a good man. And just remember, Bushmasters, we're all walking wounded. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Be proud of what you've endured. Be proud of that you have what it takes to move forward in your life. As I keep telling you every episode, death is forever. Life is short. Get amongst it. This is Semi-Indestructible, presented proudly in partnership with the Wild Times podcast, sponsored by Adventure Beast, the animated wildlife comedy series streaming on Netflix worldwide. Join us next week for another episode. Until then, stay safe, but not too safe, because remember, this is really important. Fear minus death equals adventure.
Ooh,
Get amongst it.